All right. We are live with an episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. We got a nice little compact episode today. We're going to be talking the game against Nashville, what the team looks like going to the All-Star break, the Turcotte emergence, long live Turcotte. And then we're talking about PL Dubois lineups, what they could possibly look like when everybody is healthy. So get in the chat, like, and subscribe, and you know what to do. Let's go. All right, getting into the chat here. It's just going to be Joe and I today. You know, Russell is the all-star of this show, and he's taking his all-star break a little bit early. So you're stuck with the old making it rain tandem here for today. But before we get into that, let's get in the chat. CJ was here at 3:27. Good evening, everybody. Cy, well, peeps, my tinfoil hat is on again. It's almost time. Trapper 9. Yeah, I am on time and awake. Welcome, guys. Geoff coming in here. Greetings. Chilling at work and ready for tonight's show. Richard, what up, everybody? Feels great to get one last win before the break. Amen to that. So get in the chat. Let's go here. Hit that like button. Get the algorithm spinning. You know, get it going to where we can reach more and more Kings fans. But before we dive in, Joe, my main man, how you doing, buddy?
I was doing a little better before the Orioles acquired Corbin Burns. I don't like that, Rendon, as a Yankees fan. I don't know if you saw that come through the wire within the last hour or so, but that's a pretty significant move for the Orioles to pick up an ace.
I did not see that. You know what I did see, though, is their fans saying to their owner, sell the team, and he was like, sure. And he sold the team. Yeah, to two other billionaires. And he was like, okay, yeah, if you don't like the way I'm doing this, yeah, I'll just take my money and walk.
And within 2 days, they acquire an ace.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, but I'm an Ace fan, and our management is god-awful. And I'm just a little envious that he was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll just take my money. I bought this team for pennies. It's worth billions of dollars now. Let's just move on. You know, I cashed in. But I digress. So, Andy Garcia, let's go. Finally getting a W. Welcome in, guys. So, let's get into it. The Nashville game, you know, was a good game. All right, gets the W. It's 2 points. Looking at the aftermath in the locker room, I don't know if you saw this, but it was like Kings media was like, oh, like it's dance party. And like all these players are walking in, and even Gavrikov, the dance man, expressed himself, just kind of just did this and then walked to his locker room. I think, yeah, they got 2 points. I'm sure they're excited to get 2 points, but this team looks ready for a nice 4 or 5 day break to maybe soak up some vitamin D, a few margaritas, and kind of not think about hockey for about a week.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be one of those things where you want to play the tunes, you want to do all the stuff that you're doing when you're winning, but at the end of the day, when you've been on a stretch like this and you got a break coming up, yeah, I'm sure there's a part of them that's like a sigh of relief, and let's get the hell out of Dodge, get the 2 points, and go take a break because they need one. That's for sure.
So the Kings end up winning. Get a nice little empty netter from Fiala. But the main attraction so far the last couple days has been a former 5th overall pick. Alex Turcotte gets called up between our last show, this show, and we were all wondering because they did that with Clark where they brought him up and just sat him. Was he actually going to get some run? Stunk him right in the lineup, right on 4th C. I was tired of seeing Lewis at 4th C. You were tired of seeing Lewis at 4th C, and apparently finally the Kings were as well. And bringing up Turcotte and had a hell of a game. First game was really the only one flying around there. Repeated his performance against Nashville, and so you know, stick taps to Turcotte getting his first goal and first point of his career. You gotta imagine that the monkey's off his back now, right? Like, okay, I'm healthy. I'm playing the NHL. I'm getting my first point. Like a lot of these dominoes are starting to fall, and maybe he can start taking that momentum for a good second half for the LA Kings.
I hope so. I mean, and as you said, the biggest thing for me is the kid's healthy. He's playing and he's getting his opportunity now, at least right now with the injuries and stuff going on with the Kings. So could not be happier for him. I mean, we've talked about this going back to the Making It Rain days. Like, the only problem we ran into is he just wasn't playing because he was hurt. But whenever he played, he's an impact. Every shift, he's a puck hound, but he's also creating scoring chances. Like, it's not just as if he's this grinder that can't actually do anything when he's mucking along the walls. He can get pucks, he can make plays, he can finish. We saw the other day against Nashville, really nice short side goal against one of the better goalies in the league. This is a kid that can play. He's just got to stay healthy. So, knock on wood that he's able to do so. I don't know what his status will be come post All-Star break. We'll see what the lineup looks like, who's back from injury and whatnot. But you have to be excited if you're a Kings fan who's been waiting to see Turcotte for a few years now. And I know he had a little cup of coffee in the past, but to really see the performances that he's had these last two games to be as impactful as he was these two games, you have to be excited about that. You have to be.
Yeah, let's go back to Carter Scores here. Says a healthy Turcotte is worth that draft stock. So taken 5th overall, right behind Bowen Byram and wow, I just lost my train of thought. The guy that Chicago just traded to Montreal. Kirby Dach, yeah. And so everybody obviously has been, and this crowd included, has been comparing him to Zegras because he hasn't been able to get on the ice. And Zegras blossomed first year and now is having struggles. So we'll see how that works out. But in his draft year, after he got ironically injured in his draft year, he came back and was having a higher points per game than Jack Hughes. He was on fire for the second half for Team USA. And so a lot of people were saying that, man, he could be a high goal scoring type guy. But what his game kind of reminds me of is Trevor Moore, a guy that's scrappy, a guy that can play offense and defense, a guy that's not afraid to muck it up, a guy that has just enough of a scoring touch, a guy that's going to get in the dirty areas, do little stick lifts, and always brings the energy night after night after night, and doesn't have to be talked to about bringing that energy night after night. And so I think he kind of compares to that side. He got a lot of practice on the wing, not only for Team USA, but for the Reign. Was on, TJ Tynan's line. He was on, a couple other people's lines. And so playing center and wing. Yeah. So we'll talk about that as what the roster looks like when they're healthy later on in this podcast. But, going back to tonight's game, like you saw all his draft acumen there. And I think one of my favorite plays outside the goal was a little bit turnover by his line mate, turns around, stick lift, gets the puck, dishes it off, and the momentum's going back the Kings' direction. And that's what the type of play that you can get from Turcotte on a night in and night out basis.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're seeing exactly what you want. And it's nice that he gets off the board too. So he puts the puck in the net. He gets, did he have an assist as well? Did they end up getting him an assist on that?
So he should have had 2 assists. But then after looking about it, they gave him the assist originally. And then after re-looking at it, it was more of like a turnover.
Yeah.
It was directly
he assisted on Lewis's goal.
But he assisted on Lewis's goal. So on that goal, Byfield up against the wall behind the net. Byfield is using his weight. He's shielding the defender. Turcotte kind of sees the puck through both of their legs, kind of pokes it forward, and then Byfield with his long reach dishes it directly to Lewis for the goal. And so it wasn't like a long pass assist, but I think that part of that play was instrumental in Byfield being able to assist Lewis.
For sure. And so that's the type of stuff that he's going to bring to the table. Is not only is he going to bring that energy, he's going to bring a lot of speed. He's going to bring kind of a two-way game. But again, he's got offensive touch to his game. He's got playmaking ability to his game. He's got a little bit of a knack for the net. He produced when he was in Ontario too. Again, as long as he's been on the ice, he's been a pretty productive player. So I mean, he Fagemo and Clark were sent back to Ontario, during this break here, so they'll get to keep playing a bit, which is good for them. But boy, what an injection into the lineup he's been to start these last 2 games, right? I mean, and we're going to talk about what the lineup could look like, but it'd be, you don't want to overreact to 2 games, of course. But boy, it's hard not to be excited about what you saw. I
kind of do. I kind of do. This team needs.
I don't blame you. I don't blame
you. A shot, kick in the ass, so to speak. And so, as Holden right here saying, Turcotte drastically improved the fourth line. Just him as a player improved that fourth line. That fourth line was unplayable for the last 2 weeks. And all of a sudden they were the best line for back-to-back games. They scored every single point last game besides the empty netter. And so how is it not exciting? We keep teasing the future lineups, but like Blake Lizotte comes back, and with his acumen on the wing, like you can stick him anywhere, right? You can stick him anywhere in the lineup. Like, I mean, I don't foresee him playing first line because the fact that first line is, very cohesive at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see him on the second line or on the third line or just sticking, on the wing with Lizotte. That could be, that Grundstrom, Turcotte, Lizotte, that could be a pretty nice line. You got some physicality, you got some scoring acumen a little bit. You got guys, all three guys aren't afraid to muck it up. So it's just going to be something that he's going to be able to be the cog piece that can fit anywhere in this machine.
Boy, I wouldn't mind seeing a play of Turcotte's ability, puck-houndedness, creativity, speed, playing next to Pierre-Luc Dubois on that third line. That's for sure. Maybe even with Alex Laferriere until Arvidsson gets back. That'd be a pretty fun line. I agree, Matt P. I think that's a pretty fun-looking line right there.
Laugh puts a lot of energy. Turcotte puts a lot of energy, and they might both pull PL into the fray. He shouldn't need that, but maybe that's what he will need. And so I think looking at his play, I mean, obviously he was excited, and Spence was excited, right?
Yeah.
Like you look at after that goal, like they played a whole season in Ontario together. Like they were brothers. Like Spence was excited for him, and like. But did you see the dive from the top rope from Rittich on Instagram?
Yes, I did.
He called him Glass Boy. I was like, is that his nickname in the locker room now? Like, that's got to be a fun one until he sheds that moniker. Like, what is that? He has to play a full season. But yeah, Rich was like, good goal, Glass Boy. Oh my God, that's funny. Anyway, so he gets everything off his shoulder, because this could have been very different. Right, he comes up, does nothing, or looks bad, then he definitely doesn't have a chance after the All-Star break, right? So, like now he did all that he could do to make Kings brass think otherwise by keeping him down for after the All-Star break, right?
Yeah, that's what he's got to do. He's got to make their decision difficult, right? I mean, if you're him, all you're looking for is your opportunity. You got to make the most of it. And that's exactly what he's done. The unfortunate part for him is he's one of a couple of guys that's waivers exempt, so he can go down and not have to worry about that. Where other guys, I think Grundstrom is a regular, but Grundstrom would need waivers. Anderson Dolan needs waivers. Kaliev is not playing. I don't think McClellan has much interest in playing him, but they're not going to waive him. So even if McClellan would prefer to play Turcotte over Kaliev, he's going to play Kaliev if the roster dictates that Turcotte goes down. So that's kind of the unfortunate part, I think, for McClellan, is he's probably going to have a lineup that's not as well, I would say not as good as he wants it, but I don't know what exactly he wants, but not as good as it could be.
But he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to until Arvidsson gets back. He does. Like Kings don't have to make a decision because they called him up. They didn't send him to get back down, right?
I'm going off of the of course. Yeah, you're right. I'm going off of the when Arvidsson and Lizotte are both back. Yeah, you're right.
So before we get into what future rosters and kind of just have a nice little bar conversation going back and forth, bringing up things, answering some questions in the chat. If you guys have any questions for us, please throw them in the chat. We're going to get into our sponsor here at Hockey Royalty, which is DraftKings. So looking forward to our super offer for the Super Bowl 58. DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. New customers can bet on the big game and turn $5 into $200 instantly in bonus bets. Oh, man, the odds right there are +1 or 2.5 in favor of my Niners, trying to get the quest for 6. So do you want to play some odds right there at DraftKings? Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets instantly only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the Super Bowl 58. With code THPN, the crown is yours.
Brandon, going to be honest, and it's
Yeah.
nothing personal. When the books opened 2.5, I blindly bet 2.5 wherever I could find 2.5 on Kansas City.
They opened 1.5.
Oh, two was 2.5.
And it was 1.5. It was 1.5 on DraftKings, and it moved to 2.5.
It was 2. So I think I'm looking right now. DraftKings is down to 2. There's only 1 2.5 that I can see at FanDuel. Everything else is 2. But it opened that night, the night that Kansas City won. I waited to see what the lines would be, and it was right away. It was 2.5. So I just jumped on all those, thinking this is probably going to close 1.5. But right now it's 2 at most spots. So I don't know how you're feeling about this game, but I wanted to get Mahomes at 2.5. So
I don't blame you. Mahomes is Mahomes, man.
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, we're in the whites. You know, we're in the white jerseys. So you know, white jerseys are 15-3 in the last 18. So the last white jersey to lose was ironically the Niners against the Chiefs. But no, I think this completely two different teams. I mean, we have a much better offense than we did last time. Last time we were the number 1 defense in the NFL. Like we didn't even allow a rushing touchdown until like week 15. So it was definitely something to look out for. And now we have a top offense. I think our offense is better than Kansas City's, but their defense is a whole lot better than it used to be. So
yeah.
Obviously we can't get down 17 and pray for that again. But you know, I think that this game, I don't think am I scared of Mahomes? Yeah, because he's good. But do I think our team is good enough to win? Yeah, I do. I think Brock Purdy is going to surprise a lot of people. I think we're going to be a lot better out of the gate, hopefully. But yeah, I don't blame you for taking.
Just win by 2 or less. Just win by 2 or less, and I'm a happy guy.
So let's get into the kind of future lineups, and then we're kind of open it up here for everything. So we've been hinting at the roster construction. So if Arvidsson comes back, obviously the LTIR comes off the books, and we have to move some things. And I got kind of into it on X back and forth, like what they're going to do, and you know, how are they going to make this work? And I pretty much said that, like, look at Vegas last year, right? Like they had all this LTIR, they were like over the cap by $9 million or whatever. They made it work. So the trade deadline might be moving pieces out to make the cap work. If they really want Turcotte in the lineup, they're going to have Turcotte in the lineup. So, you know, obviously Blake hasn't been as aggressive. He's been a lot cautious with his prospects and stuff like that, and sending down the guys that are able to be sent down. But to me, this season seems a little bit different. The call up of Clark when he didn't really need to call him up because they have Jordan Spence. All this kind of stuff, I think they feel the pressure, both Blake and Todd McClellan, to where obviously not making the playoffs would be a huge disappointment. So they might ship some guys out, as you mentioned, Arthur Kaliev, that has openly said he wants a better opportunity, whether it is with the Kings or without. He doesn't want to be on the fourth line. He doesn't want to be a scratch every other night or multiple nights in a row. So to me, Joe, it seems like trade is the only way to make the cap situation work.
Well, there's a couple things they could do. So with the help of Cap Friendly and their armchair GM, and I'm using the LTIR enabled and their prorated cap hit kind of to project out the future. You would need a trade, but you'd probably also need another move because and so if you have the roster like it is right now, if you were looking to keep Turcotte and LaFerriere up, then the Kings, you know, Anderson Dolan would end up, he'd probably be the first one that's an odd man out. Him and Fagemo would go down. And that would give them 23 players. However, they're over the cap by about $1 million, a little over $1 million. So what they would have to do is, now again, I know there's ways to do this like daily, and this is why you see a lot of paper transactions, things like that, right? That to kind of play around the cap space. So barring that, which obviously will open up some, they're going to have to make another roster decision. If in your example, you trade Arthur Kaliev, and now the problem with that is, I would say if you're going to trade Kaliev, you would try to get something that's going to help you. in this example, he would only be a cap dump. So if we do that, we can remove Kaliev from the lineup, but you're still over the cap by like 200 grand or so. So you can see how difficult this becomes. That's why the increasingly likely scenario is that it's Laferriere and it's Turcotte that find their way odd men out because they can. And again, that's even if you were to trade Kaliev. Now, I know I see some in the comments about Grunstrom. He's the most expensive of the bunch at 1.3 million, so he would certainly clear up a lot. I'm not opposed to it. I do think he's better than Anderson, Dolan, Lewis. I actually prefer Grunstrom to Kaliev. So I don't know that it necessarily makes the team better, but it does open up space. I mean, again, it's you have Andreas Englund makes $1 million, and we already know that Englund and Lewis aren't going anywhere. That's 1.775. It is what it is. They're not going to go anywhere.
Do you think there's a chance that they trade Lewis to a contender?
No.
Or do you think that was brought up when they signed him?
Lewis isn't going anywhere. He ain't going. Of all of the lineup shuffling that we've seen during this, what was this? They've lost 16 of 18 or whatever the streak is. Lewis and Englund are like the only two depth pieces that haven't come out of the lineup, which is asinine, frankly. Like, even if you want to play them most games for whatever your reasons are, the fact that they haven't even been like brought out at all for a game, 2 games, and tried something a little different is it's mind-boggling to me. But regardless, so I think that's going back to the conversation. It's going to be Turcotte or Laferriere, because they're not waiving Lewis, and I'll believe it when I see it if they do something with Grunstrom. They might, but they're not waiving him. He's not been bad enough to waive. So I think it's just going to be Laferriere or Turcotte. Do I agree with it? No, because listen, there's a choice to be made here. Voluntarily fielding and icing a roster that is not as good as it could be is a choice. They have a choice, and they're going to choose to use the waivers exempt. I get it. I think it makes a lot of sense in prior years. I think if you're a team that is trying to tell your fans that you want to win a playoff round, I think you need to field your best roster to do so. So we'll see.
So do they acquire LTIR space?
That would be getting creative. And that I don't know. I mean, I guess if that's something that they can do, I'm sure they're going to check everything. But again, I mean, it's contrary. You have a choice. They have a choice. They have choices. I mean, you don't. I mean, you don't.
But
have
a team
to
that's making
less good.
Well,
roster.
You don't have to, but they're choosing to it. They've chosen to all season.
Yeah. I mean, and I know they put themselves in a spot because of the cap, right? They tightened themselves up, which again was a choice. They didn't have to do this. Andreas Englund makes $1 million. Jacob Moverari makes $7 and whatever league minimum I think is $7.75. I want to say, not a significant savings, but he's cheaper when you're talking about everything you can cut. Trevor Lewis makes $7.75. That actually same as Anderson Dolan. They're the same player, more or less. I think Anderson Dolan can do just exactly what Trevor Lewis does. So you'd save a little bit, but you'd have a little bit more flexibility, right? Because there's as much as I like Jared Anderson Dolan and Moverari, if you were to put them on waivers, we've seen both of them clear multiple times. There's not really, you don't put Trevor Lewis on waivers. That's not going to happen. That's, he's a veteran guy. He's won 2 cups. They brought him in here to be that veteran guy. They're not going to waive the guy. He's going to be on the roster regardless. They're not waiving him. And so, Englund's here for 2 years, right? He's got a 2-year deal. I don't think they're waiving Andreas Englund. Clearly they're not. They like him. He's not going anywhere either. So again, this is they put themselves in this spot. They didn't have to. They could have run with a much more roster of flexibility this season, which probably would have made a lot of sense considering the cap constraints that they had. But they didn't want to. They wanted to lock in 2 spots with Lewis and England, and that's the decision they made.
The England one didn't surprise me because I knew they needed another defenseman if they weren't ready to play Clark, right? Because you didn't want Clark, and if they didn't want Clark and Spence at the same time, and if whatever reason, I don't know whether they have it out for the big tuna, but Mavare gets no pub. And Rush showed a graph, I think like a couple weeks ago on the X, and he's been our underlying metrics. He's our best defenseman. And now, granted, small sample size, but he's been our best defenseman. He's most reliable. You never hear anything about him. Like, it's not bad play by Mavara, and you're like he seems like the quintessential third pair guy that like, hey, he's there. You never see him. You never hear from him.
Moves pucks.
He moves pucks.
And not for nothing, Brandon. He's spotted in when Gavrikov was hurt.
Gavrikov was hurt.
He played top 4. He played with Roy. So it's just ridiculous that because he doesn't hit, because he doesn't fight. There it is.
You gotta have those. And so like I understand England. Do I understand a 2-year like lock into that? No, because I think they should have gave him some freedom. Were we competing with Andres England with other teams, and the second year got the deal done over the first year? I don't know how those talks went, but the Lewis thing is the mind-boggling thing over the defenseman, and we talked about it at nauseam in the beginning of the season. But it's like you have Turcotte, you have Fagemo, you have Laugh making I mean, I guess he was signed before Laugh made all those waves in camp, but you have Akil Thomas, you have Jad, you have all these guys that you've all those guys were drafted in the second round or higher. So like you're not going to give and Kaliev, you're not going to give these guys like you could tumble dry a guy in the lineup out every night. You bring a guy who hasn't been good the last couple of years. I'm just over it. Trevor Lewis, thank you for the cups, man, but I'm just over your play.
What it does is in like because listen, Lewis is a fine to good defensive winger. Fine. There can be value in that. I don't think it holds much value on a Kings team that is known for their defensive prowess. Fine, though. Okay. As I said early in the season, I genuinely don't think they brought Lewis in for anything he does on the ice. I think they brought Lewis in for his vibes, which is fine. He's a great dude by all accounts. I know he kills penalties. I'll mention that in a second. But what it did is, even if
Kings, I have good vibes. So I would like a roster spot or just a bench spot. I'll sit on the bench and just bring the vibes.
Even if Lewis is marginally better than some of the other young players that you mentioned, I don't agree with it. But even if, let's say he was, there's no flexibility there because you are not moving Trevor Lewis. There's no flexibility within that roster. At best, you might be able to healthy scratch him. But that you're not going to do that on a consistent basis because it doesn't look good on the player. It's a little embarrassing to the player, perhaps. You're certainly not going to waive him. So that's what I mean is where you're stuck in that roster spot. That is an immovable spot. Whereas if you did have it a little bit more fluid, you were willing to go with a little bit more youth in that position. It's a little bit more, you have guys that some of these guys are waiver exempt. He'd be able, even if the guys they didn't have an issue waiving Fagemo, they didn't have an issue waiving Jared Anderson-Dolan. There's no problems with them doing that. So I don't think that should have been something that would scare them away. I just think it locks them in a spot, and Trevor Lewis, for all the comments about his penalty kill, fine. He plays on the penalty kill. I think he's getting way too much credit for the Kings having the best penalty kill percentage in the league. It's not to say he's been bad there's a lot of numbers that suggest he wasn't very good. And we're starting to see his ice time go down too on the penalty kill. In the first 29, 30 games of the season, he was first among forwards in ice time on the penalty kill. The game since then, he's fifth among forwards on ice time in the penalty kill. Just generally don't think it makes that big of a difference, whether it's Lewis, Kopitar, Kempe, Danault, Moore. Those guys are better players. So I don't buy the penalty kill argument in the slightest. For the 2 minutes a game he plays in the penalty kill, that's what you're keeping him around for? Seriously? And
the floor is similar, like you mentioned, but the ceiling for all these other players, these players are way higher.
Yeah, it's not even close.
Like,
and
just look at the last 2 games with Turcotte.
Yeah, he
like
totally revitalized that line.
Yeah, and then you could have Fagemo playing every night. You could have Jad playing every night, to where maybe you get like Fagemo could turn into a third, second line winger with his shooting ability. Lewis will never be that again. So, like, where are we?
Yeah,
like,
it was it was unnecessary. And I see this is a very fair comment from SDR here. Has Lewis really been the problem? Listen, the fact that we're spending this, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. We shouldn't really be spending this much time. He's a fourth line player. Like, we don't need to be going too crazy. You're right. It's not that he has been the problem. The problem is the roster construction, and he's a part of that problem. Is because he is locked into that spot, and there's no flexibility there whatsoever. Meanwhile, they've had a Turcotte that they could have been coming up that they can't come up until somebody gets hurt or whatever the case is, because they have a Lewis sitting there. So it's just a blockage that is completely unnecessary. And it really, they had a decision to make in the offseason. Do we go with the youth or do we go with a veteran? I mean, and you weren't bringing in a veteran to do like, you could sell me, believe it or not, you could sell me on bringing in a veteran with a little bit more sandpaper, somebody like a Corey Perry. You could have sold me on that. I would have probably disagreed with it, but you could have sold me on that. To bring in Lewis, for what? I asked Russ, I think I asked you guys months ago, if Lewis wasn't on this team and won 2 cups with this team, is he here? No, because he's not that good of a player, but he's got value to the Kings as an organization because of what he's brought. And I hate like saying that, because I do love the guy, you know, what he did for the Kings in his career. It's just, and I'm looking at the roster right now. It's a
bottleneck.
Well, and it is, especially when you
in a line like the third and fourth line should be lines that you're able to rotate guys in and give opportunities and do all those kind of things, and that's not the case for the Kings.
Especially when you lose a Lazat and they slide, they are again forced. It's a choice. They're not forced, but they chose to play Lewis as 4C, which is never going to work. He hangs on barely as fourth line right wing, and you think he's going to play. The drop off is massive. I mean, it was a mistake.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I would rather see Chad.
I don't want to beat the dead horse with Lewis anymore. I feel bad because again, it's nothing. I like the guy a lot. I don't even know, but I mean, I just like him as a Kings fan.
But we're looking at this roster now at the break, right? And this team is trying to win a series. And as much as you're saying, well, that's what they said.
I'm kidding.
But as much as you're saying that they won't trade him or they won't, they traded Jonathan Quick. They weren't afraid to get him to make some moves. Like, they shouldn't be afraid to trade Trevor Lewis to keep Turcotte. They shouldn't be afraid to do whatever. If he has to be a casualty in order to make this lineup better as a roster constraint, I don't understand why they're not hesitant. Hey, Trevor Lewis, sorry, didn't work out. We needed your cap space. Thank you very much. We'll trade you to a playoff team if possible. Or we'll just we'll cut you and you can sign where else. Like, I'll
just believe it when I see it.
I don't think it's likely, but we're talking about what they should do.
Right.
I mean, they should do that. I think they have to win. I mean, let's talk about that, Joe. If this team doesn't make the playoffs or this team gets kicked out in the first round, are T-Mac and Rob's jobs at risk? Because I saw a comment up, I couldn't find it again, but look at Rob Blake's moves this offseason. Bring in PL Dubois, not a great move so far.
Yep.
Andreas Anglin, not a great move so far, and Trevor Lewis.
Well, those last two depends who you ask. There's a lot of people that think that those are great moves. One fights and the other one kills penalties. So to some, those have been fantastic moves. I know that you and I vehemently disagree with that, but
those moves didn't help the team win.
I would agree. And yeah, PLD, I was somebody who's a big fan of the trade. I'll say it again that I still think the trade is going to work out. Has not gone very well to date, right? He has not lived up to his end of the bargain. So I think I said at the time of the trade, this will determine Rob Blake's tenure with the Kings. I mean, if PL goes off and has, a good career in Los Angeles, then Blake's looking pretty good. If not, and it kind of goes like the first half of this season has gone, then a lot of people are going to be asking Blake's question. To your question about if they don't make the playoffs, McClellan, if he survives the regular season, will be gone if they don't make the playoffs. Yeah, or if they get bounced in the first round. I don't see how he survives that. I think it's been fortunate that he's made it this long, given the stretch that they've been on. Just given the nature of sports and how we see coaches take falls, deservedly or not, we see coaches take falls for big slumps like this.
Richard coming in here with Hellenius would be a badass penalty killer and fourth line center. That's what they drafted him to be, is a big bottom six guy that they can put some weight on people and do that kind of thing. Will he get the call up this year? Probably not. But that's something to look for in the offseason if they make some space for a guy like that. So let's get into Artie a little bit. Obviously not trying to play him. They said that they would on this road trip. I think he played once. Maybe twice. So twice. No, he played twice. So yeah. So didn't really get a chance. He looked good with Turcotte, and then they took him out. So they found Turcotte and Kaliev had that Team USA connection. They were paired there. They trust each other. It probably gave AK a boost, to his mental part, because this can't be easy for him mentally. I'll just say this. I think the best thing for him would be to get traded.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because he doesn't have a future. If Todd McClellan is no longer with the team and the future coach values him in a different light, then that might be something that could be used. But right now, as the team stands, as the coaching staff stands, he's not valued on the team where he needs to, where his skill set is necessary. And so, I think the best thing for him would be to get traded.
Yeah, so do I. And I also think he's a valuable asset in a trade. Now, I know the Kings don't have any, we just talked about how they don't have any cap space. So I don't know what he would have to be paired with somebody that makes money to come back if you're going to bring something of value back to this team, or it's dollar for dollar. And that's tough to do with how little he makes. I mean,
agree. Even a pick. I mean, just get a pick. Who cares?
I hate that. I hate that idea. I don't hate that. I don't like that idea because I think that he still has value in the market. Young player, great shot, has shown he can score at the NHL level. I still think that there's teams that would be very, very interested in Arthur Kaliev, and that probably are interested in Arthur Kaliev. I'll be honest.
So you think he's more of like a piece that gets the deal done rather than the focal point to get a pick?
I don't want to trade him for a pick if I can avoid it. I would like him to be a key piece in a deal that can bring something of value, whether it's a middle six forward, another defenseman. Again, I know that because of cap constraints, that becomes extremely difficult. So I don't know.
We were talking about a trade last week for a left shot D, whether it was a guy that could be signed long term, whether it was a Chicken or Byram or whatever, like a Roy, Kaliev, and a pick for a Byram, like that he could be a piece that kind of raises the value of that type of thing. Yeah. I think you might be right, because what are you getting for Kaliev right now? A third or a fourth? Maybe a late second for a playoff team if they need some power play help.
So, right? But that said, I kind of am with McClellan on this because I'm not itching to play him. I don't know who I'm playing him over. Well, I take that back. I think you know who I'd play him over, but we both know that's not going to happen. But I don't think he's shown better than Grundstrom. I think Laferriere and Turcotte are ahead of him. I'm an Anderson Dolan guy. People might think that's crazy. I think he does a lot more without the puck than Kaliev does. I think he does a really good job creating spaces and creating chances. Better, more so than Kaliev. I acknowledge Kaliev's strong suits. I think he's got a good hockey brain on knowing where to find open space in the offensive zone. He's got a great release, but I haven't seen enough of him at consistency at 5-on-5 I'm not going to sit here and argue that he's got to be in the lineup. So if that's the case, then yeah,
he needs to play in the middle six to be effective. For his skill set to be effective.
Well, the thing is, though, like hypothetically, talking about when Lizotte comes back, he's performed with Lizotte before. And if you had a line of Lizotte, Turcotte, and Kaliev, whoo, baby, that could go.
That could be good. Yeah.
That could go. And then you get him back on PP2, you might be able to unlock a player there. But Randon, there's a certain veteran right winger that's going to clog that spot. So it ain't happening. It ain't happening. So to your point, in this setup, he's got to go. He's got to. But I think I don't want to see him go. If they're going to trade him for a pick, I'd rather not. I'd rather try to see him be dealt in a deal to acquire a player to help.
It seems that Fagemo, a lot of these guys are not being put in the best situations to succeed. Because Fagemo could help the power play. He's been doing it all year. He's on pace for a bajillion goals for the Red. So, it wouldn't be it doesn't seem that they are willing to put people in their best situation to succeed. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an X's and O's guy. I didn't play the game, and so that better than I. But the power play hasn't looked good. So and McClellan said itself in his interview, doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results it's sanity. And and after he says that, they keep doing it. I don't understand, what does it hurt to throw Kaliev back on power play 2 or power play 1 or Fagemo when he's been up, to have him on a side that he can one time some pucks in. I just don't get it. It's 2 minutes to 4 minutes a game, and it hasn't looked good. So what does it matter?
I think they need to get Laferriere on the first unit and play him down low. We've talked about the righty down low being a miss. They have really been hesitant to use Laferriere at all in the power play up until recently. He's been getting some PP2 time. But with how much the first power play is struggling and how well it showed last year with a righty down low. And thing is, you can't just have any righty. Fagemo doesn't fit power play 1 for the way they operate it. So it has to be somebody that's a little bit more willing to and capable of playing down low, being a little bit more of a playmaker. And I think Laferriere can handle that. I'd like to see it. What the hell could it lose? Or, what could it hurt? So I still think that's the case. And, Fagemo, I guess you could make the case for him to be on power play 2 on that left flank. That said, so Dubois scored from there a couple games ago. I think it was the Blues game. Now I don't remember if it was the Blues game.
So his only goal of the power play for the entire season?
But my point is I think that's a good spot for him. I liked him there. I didn't like him on the right flank, on the right top right circle. I think Dubois is probably better suited in more of a playing lower. Even if he's not the low guy like net front, playing lower, down lower, along the goal line, I think could be. Yeah, it was the Buffalo game, Holden. Thank you. Playing a little bit down lower, I think suits him better. So maybe to that point, Randon, you could use Fagemo, I guess, on that left circle. But I don't think it's necessary to do that because I think, if God forbid one game we see Clark and Spence in the lineup together, they can both play on that second power play with Clark at the top and Spence at the left circle.
But look at the power play for Ontario. They had Tynan is not a shooter; he's a facilitator. But Kaliev is good at facilitating. He's not Tynan level, but he can facilitate. or PL is a decent passer if you want to put him on that half wall. But then you have Clark or Spence being able to facilitate the right-handed shot. Like, they need to have a vision for these power plays. And to me, it doesn't seem like they do. And I know they do because they have to work on it, and they probably will work on it and draw some things up. But like, homeboy's like shooting nonstop in the AHL, and you bring him up and you don't play him on the power play, and you play him in the like. This is my gripe with the team, is that you're not setting up young talent to be successful. The best thing that they have done for young talent is moving Byfield up to the first line to get confidence. That has been the best thing that's happened for young talent on this team. And they're doing it with Laferriere, which I'm not as high on as you in Russ, because I think he hasn't shown the ability to score this season. He's played solid game. I think you guys value him defensively way higher than the consensus. I looked at his card today for the Athletic, 30% of the league in defense. So, like, I don't mind him getting less ice time, but for the power play, because he's a righty, like, we would need that. I don't know, man. I'm not a magician, and I'm not a fortune teller. I'm just fed up with the way this team is playing, and I need some real change instead of just hoping for something to happen.
It's fair, and which is why it's nice to see the injection of life from a Turcotte, right? And it allows that flexibility again, because again, he can play both positions. Now you can kind of move him throughout the lineup as you see fit. Hopefully Lizotte gets back. Hopefully Arvidsson's back before long. I mean, before you know it, this roster looks to be full again, and and again, but to be honest with you, I'm not itching for Fagemo to play either, and that's nothing against him. It's just he's behind the other guys in the depth chart for me. Everybody that's up there, I'm fine with them being ahead of him, and that includes Anderson Dolan. I think he's a creative player. I think he's a pretty good player in his own right that doesn't get a ton of credit, but I think he does a lot of little things pretty well.
I'm going to propose a question to you, since we're just kind of doing a little open forum here, there, Joseph. Would not making the playoffs be the worst thing for the Kings? And let me preface this. An early out. So, like, if this continues by the end of February and they're out of the playoffs, not missing it in April, would a quick reset be the worst thing for the Kings? You trade off all maybe you trade Roy because he's an expiring contract. You trade Lewis because he's an expiring contract. Maybe you get some more picks for the cupboard, or a young player that you can re-sign. And then they go next year with the core still intact. Byfield is still playing. Laugh gets another year. You create room for the next 2 months to play Turcotte on a consistent basis, to play Fagemo on a consistent basis, to be all that kind of stuff like that. Potentially getting a new coach for a new energy at the end of the year. I don't know about Blake or whatever, but like a minor reset, would that be the worst thing for the Kings, or am I just overthinking that?
No, I think that would be a bad thing. It would definitely be among the worst things. Now, I see what you're saying. Like, if that happens, it's a very reasonable thing to do, I would say. What would Matt Roy covet if he were to become available? That's a big acquisition for a team. So, like, I get where you're going, right?
Victor Arvidsson's on an expiring contract. What playoff team wouldn't want a Victor Arvidsson?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like, if that happens, I don't think that that's a bad idea to do that. They've lost 1 billion games out of 1,000,000,002. And they're still a couple points up in the wild card. So, like, they would have to, this stretch would have to really keep going, like, heavy over this next month for that to become a possibility. I guess it could happen, but I don't
think they need a clean house. Like, I don't think they need to just ship all these players away. Like, let's trade trade more. Let's trade.
Listen, it would be the worst thing. You make the deal, you do what you do in the offseason, you go get Dubois, like you said. Like, if they miss playoffs this year, that's a no-go. Again, you can turn it into you can spin it into like a little mini reset, sell those pieces, You've got the pieces to backfill them. Like I see where you're going, and you're not wrong. But it would be
I'm not
very
saying
bad.
it's my highest. It's my highest priority. Like,
Yeah.
if we do miss the playoffs, I'd rather be early. Like, I'd rather it.
Fair enough.
It would like I know it's the worst thing because of what we thought this season would be. Right. So like I get it. And Trapper, we're not buying out PLD. So let's just stop that. But like it's better than missing the playoffs in April when you can't do anything about it. You know, like obviously I want this team. Obviously, I want this team to fix whatever bad voodoo. You know, go and pray to the lords of hockey, whatever sacrifice that we need to make to the gods to get this team back around. I would love that. It just all this talk about roster construction and how this team is built or whatever. Sometimes teams that do a little tweaking like that, you see it turn around quicker than not. Obviously, I think all whole fan base would be crushed if they made the playoffs. Didn't make the playoffs, and me too. But
yeah,
I just trying to make a little lemonade out of the sour lemons that we've been given for the last month.
I see the logic, right? I see the logic, and I'm here, Randon, for the Roy Kaliev for chicken trade. I'm here for it, okay? Because that helps us for this year, but it also he's here for next year too. So I'm all in. I know that's exactly what you're proposing. So I will put those words in your mouth. But no, I get it. I get it. But I also wonder though if they do that. I don't know what ownership's thoughts are of Blake. Are they going to let Blake, if the team falters that much, like if McClellan is probably out, and does the ownership want to give Blake the reins on, and which is crazy because it wasn't that long ago. I'm sitting in this chair loving everything Blake has done, and that included PLD. You know, I didn't like the fact that what he had to do with Cal Peterson, but he did what he had to do. Other than that, that was like his only blemish.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like that. I was very against the Lewis signing from the get-go. I was willing to be open on the England thing because, you know, again, they didn't, you know, I mean, I would have just played Mo Ferrari, but they don't like him. Bjornfoot, I didn't think he was much of a player, so I can buy it. I can understand it. After watching him play for half a season, 2 years is hilarious to me. But those aren't like deals. The Lewis and England aren't deals.
Bjornfoot, I think is forgivable, right? Because picks fail all the time.
No. What I mean is like they did. You could have, the logic could have been, well, we're not going to go sign England because we have Bjornfoot. We'll just play Bjornfoot. But I understand them not wanting to do that. Yeah, I understand them not wanting to play Bjornfoot because he's not that good. But those aren't the deals that lose Blake his job. It's the PLD one. Like the PLD has not worked right now. He has not played to his expectation. And I've been one, you know, it'd be nice to see him with different line mates. It'd be nice to see him up the lineup a little bit more. That's all true. There's a lot of things he does well. That's all true. But there's also plenty that is on him too, that he's not living up to his end of the bargain. So it's a two-way street here. You know, so hopefully we start to see a better PL Dubois as we go forward. But if they miss playoffs after the Dubois trade, I have to think Blake's in trouble.
Trade and sign for
right
$8.5 million. Yeah,
trade and sign and then miss playoffs, or get to a point where how does he go to ownership and say we're actually going to sell? How do you sell that? Because they have.
Well, you can't sell after the season.
No. What I mean is, how do you sell that? How do you, after what you went to acquire Dubois, you signed to the deal, the season goes so bad that you're going to sell at the deadline? That's what you're going to do. If you're in ownership, you taking that, or you're finding a new GM? I don't know.
I would take a quick sell over hey, I don't know what we're going to do. Let's just stand pat and do nothing.
Yep. I understand where you're coming from.
Let's get into some happier topics about anything but
like
not making the playoffs. Victor Arvidsson. Let's talk about that. We're talking about future lineups. So Victor Arvidsson potentially coming back. Obviously, this is going to be every single line that we've thought about for the entire year, besides the Kopitar, Byfield, Kempe line, has not come to fruition. So who knows what's going to happen? But obviously, he played with Dano more last year.
Yep.
Okay. That line has been buzzing. Fiala's kind of been in and out of the doghouse. Seems like a game at a time, and then he'll put up like 3 points, and then he'll be fine. But where do you think he will go if he comes back, and where would you like to see him go?
Just put Arvidsson with Dano and Moore, and then play Dubois with Fiala and Kaliev, and that'll be the doghouse line. Everybody loves nickname lines, right? That'll be a line. Fiala, Dubois, and Kaliev. 3 players that McClellan can't stand. No, I'm guessing. I don't know. I get the sense that McClellan does like that Dano line, and rightfully so. I mean, that's been a really good line. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Arvidsson play along Dubois. It's just who is the other winger? Is it Laferriere? Who, again, I maintain that I like a lot what I see with Laferriere and Dubois. I think they got a little something there. Or is it Turcotte? I think those are the two that make the most sense, but I also acknowledge that there's a real chance that one of them or both of them is in Ontario. So, and that could make that a moot point. And, it might be Dubois, Anderson, Dolan, and Arvidsson could be the line, right? That's a possibility. And I don't hate that. I don't hate it. Listen, It's not, again, I don't want that because I'm a play your best players guy. I already know they're not going to willingly do that. So I'm just setting myself up and preparing myself for what's going to come. But I don't think that's a bad line. It's similar, obviously, to what it is now, right? Instead of Laferriere, it's Arvidsson. The downside to Arvidsson is I do think we got to pump the brakes a little bit on. I don't expect him to come right back and be Victor Arvidsson. I hope he does, but I think that'd be a little unfair to expect that, right?
Patrick Kane took about a couple weeks to get going, and he had back surgery and stuff too. So,
yeah,
I mean, you're looking at probably March before any resemblance of Victor Arvidsson takes over. But I think that's on the scoring touch there, Joe, and where a lot of the parts of his game is his puck hound mentality, where he's always going, always pushing, and he has that energy, which could move a line like the PL line. I think it'd be interesting to jumble it up a lot, and I've been the fan of that lately.
Yep.
You have a little bit would be Dano, Arvidsson, and I just lost my train of thought. Dano, Arvidsson, Fiala, PL, Moore, and Laferriere.
Okay.
Because you've been wanting more with Pierre. I think that kind of drives that line a little bit. You have a puck getter with Arvidsson, and then you have potentially 2 score and Dano, and then you have a scorer with both Fiala. I think that could kind of push both of those lines. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing PL with Arvidsson and Moore as well. And have Dano, Laferriere, and Fiala, because I think Dano can carry any line.
Yeah. Dano's a play driver. I mean, I wouldn't do this because I wouldn't want to limit Byfield's ice time. So it would be kind of awkward, but like Laferriere can play, and he played up pretty well, I thought, with Kopitar and Kempe. I think Byfield would do wonders for Dubois. I think Byfield could be a really nice fit next to PL. A Byfield PL Arvidsson line would be, I think, a potentially formidable line too. There's a lot of options
because you want Byfield so that way he can do all the stuff that PL should be doing with his size in the corner.
I mean, it's for a similar reason. Yeah, actually, for a similar reason that I like Moore is because of just the pace that they play at next to PL. But we saw a little bit of that with Turcotte too. So on Turcotte's goal, you saw.
Oh my God, Moore was just flying.
He was. he was flying, but that's exactly what I envisioned with PL and Moore was, so Moore entered the zone with speed through the neutral zone, through the center of the ice, on the rush, makes a play to Turcotte, he scores. That's what I envision, having a player like a Moore who could be the Turcotte of that play, where PL enters the zone with possession through the center like he likes to do, make a dish to a streaking Trevor Moore. That's why I think Moore would be an intriguing fit there, is because of the chances they could create off the rush. I think becomes pretty intriguing to me.
And now, and you're 100% right. And I know a lot of fans will be like, "What? Like PL doesn't move his skates at all?" And we talked about this before a couple podcasts ago. What is it's NHL? What is their
the NHL edge data?
Edge data. And so he was top. I think he was top 95% in the league with burst and speed. But he was bottom 50% in miles traveled or ice traveled. So like he can get up and move, but he doesn't move a lot on his ice. And so like I think a lot of fans view his laziness as laziness, but the data backs up that he's not moving along the ice. Because you look at Kopitar, right? Kopitar, not a speedy person, doesn't have that burst, but he travels a lot on the ice because he's constantly moving, constantly hounding, and doing those things.
Kopitar is one of the slower guys in the league per this information, but like you say, covers a ton of ground. PL Dubois' top skating speed is in the 76th percentile of the NHL. So not slow, but his speed burst over 20 miles per hour is in the 85th percentile. So he's not slow. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not gonna call anybody lazy. I'm not there. And anybody that calls him lazy, I disagree. I mean, I don't know. You go to the locker room and tell me he's lazy. Okay. If you're there and you're in the room and you're seeing the work he's not putting in, then fine, call him lazy. But I'm not going to do that.
I will say his game is lazy at times.
He needs to be more engaged, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. If you want to use that term, yes.
But I don't like the word lazy. But anyways, so my point is, I think because of how good he is entering the zone and creating plays off the rush, he doesn't really have line mates to do that. I think, Laferriere hasn't been shown to be right now a goal scoring threat off the rush right now. I like him. I like a lot of what he brings, but I think that other player on that wing, if it's a Trevor Moore, somebody who's shown he can put pucks in the net flying off the rush, I'm in on that. I'm interested in that. Or Kempe.
Which is why Arvidsson, had looked well. Yeah, the Kempe experiment down with him showed well for the first little bit. I don't know why they decided to go back.
Yeah, but again, it's just trying to find the right fit. Like I can acknowledge two things at once, that I think there's a lot of things that PL does well, and he also needs to be much more engaged when he doesn't have the puck and going to get the puck and keeping the puck, winning puck battles. I get all that, but I can sit here and bitch about it and say they should buy him out or say it was the horrible trade or whatever, or try to find ways that I think makes it fit. And that's all I'm trying to do, is I think because of his skill set and what he's good at, let's bring that out. Let's get somebody to complement what he's good at. And I that's where I don't think he's had the right wingers. Again, not to make an excuse for the play he's made, but I think that he could use some wingers that complement the things that he does well. That's all.
I think you're 100% correct. And I had a coach once tell me, and I asked him, I was like, "Hey, like I'm not good at this." And I think it was for basketball when we were playing. I was like, "I'm not good at this, man. Like I'm a tall guy, but I'm not a ferocious rebounder, and my defensive acumen is not great, but I can shoot." Like, and he goes, "Well, that's why we run plays to get you for your jump shot. Like we accentuate plays for your strengths, and you should build on your strengths. And instead of, defense is an effort thing. So just keep putting in effort. Yeah, you might not be a glove or a steals guy, but keep putting in effort and then work on the things that make you good. And like working on the things that make you good and putting players that bring that out. And I agree with you, Joe, is what they need to do. Now the engagement is effort on his part, right?
Correct.
That's something that he can change on his own, but having better line mates or line mates that accentuate his skill set and what it is and what he does well is coaching at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he I think there's yes.
So
I
there's
think
a little of both. Yes.
yeah. There's I think there's a little of both, and you if you want to make the case that it's more on him, by all means, fair enough. But I think we can acknowledge a couple things at the same time here. I think we're capable of doing that.
So I think it'll be interesting where VA fits in and how they make that work. And this schedule's been interesting. Richard comes in here. They need harder practice sessions, but Tom McClellan's like, we haven't really been practicing. And so the beginning, they had a bunch of open days and all this kind of stuff like that. And then now the schedule's really tightened up to where they're playing a lot of these games in succession. And unfortunately for them, their packed schedule has been in the worst part of the season where they haven't been able to work on things. And I don't know if that's because they're not getting rest days or they're not able to work on things where in the beginning of the season they were able to make tweaks, or both things are both true. But it would be nice to have a little bit more space in the schedule to figure some things out and try some things at practice for this team.
They don't have the practice time, but a note on Richard says they need more harder practice sessions. Now, I don't know exactly what Richard means, if he's talking like bag skates or whatever, but that ain't going to happen. Those days are not the thing. And McClellan said it as much. Is like, if you think I'm going to show up here and just bag skate these guys, that's not going to happen. I don't believe in that. And that's not, it doesn't work. It's not. And I don't think it's necessary. I think there's ways to have now, going along what Richard says, there's ways to have very hard practices that forces you to skate just as hard as if you were bag skating, but you're working on things, right? You're working on battles or whatever it is. So, and I don't know, that's, I'm not at practices. So, and then it kind of like, as a team, do they need to work on battle or do they need to work on shoring up some things, whether it's system wise or what it might be, because the harder practices may not accomplish necessarily what this team is looking for. And maybe it does for PL if he responds to it, but it doesn't necessarily accomplish what the team is. So there's an article in The Athletic that talked about a bunch of random teams in January, and the Kings, it ain't good. Like, they are a bottom 10 team when it comes to odd man rushes against, scoring chances against, one of the worst teams in the league in the rush chances against. This is since December 28th, since this stretch started. High danger chances against, their bottom 10th. Like, they are not playing well defensively.
They're a sieve on the defensive side of the puck,
zone. So, it's I don't know that a harder practice does anything for that, or do they need we're doing it. And I don't know. This is where video session comes in, and McClellan, the coaching staff, they're going through all this stuff to say, is it something that's consistent? Why all of a sudden we went from being, because all those stats I rattled off up until the 28th of December, they were first, like first in odd man rushes against, first in scoring chances against, first in rush scoring chances against, second in slot shots against, all these, first in expected goals against, right? Second in scoring chances against. They were one of the best in the league at all of these, and they've gone to one of the bottom half of the league, if not worse, in all of these. That's alarming.
So I want to ask you this then, Joe. The beginning of the season, everybody was talking up the 1-3-1, at least nationally. Nathan McKinnon said it's a bitch to play against. And we were talking about this podcast that it seems like it's a counter punch type offense to where you try to make them make a mistake, get them to lose the puck. We take it, make a good outlet pass, and the puck goes back the other direction.
Yeah.
But the thing with the 1-3-1 is it's a buy-in factor. And we saw it early last season where the team was kind of trying to figure it out, and they started off slow, and then they bought into it, and it propelled this team. I think that you're looking at the 1-3-1. It needs to be everybody needs to be fully bought in, because they all have an individual role that they have to play, right? But I also think, as Holden mentioned here, I do think that some teams, and coaches aren't stupid. They watch film too. Like, some teams have figured out where to put the pressure on the 1-3-1 to make it less effective. And so does McClellan need to get further buy-in from the system? Do they need to run multiple systems in on the team to where they can counter, similar to football, right? So football, they have the cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, they have cover 6, like they have all these different things to accomplish different defensive goals on the field. Do they need to kind of come up with something, not come up with something, because I'm sure McClellan already has ideas, but where do you, as a coach's mind, where do you think that he needs to go? Is it shoring up the thing that they do really well? Is it coming up with something different to where they can adjust mid-game? Like, how would you kind of view this?
There's a few things to unpack here. One, so again, this article is from Shayna Goldman in The Athletic, and the stats that she references here are from Stathletes. Sorry. So the rush chances against, the odd man rushes, they're now 15th in the NHL versus when they were first. Rush scoring chances against, so scoring chances against off the rush, they're 25th. So to me, that is telling me that the neutral zone is not working right now. However, there's a lot that can go into that, because how much of that is against the 1-3-1, right? So what I mean by that, the 1-3-1 is going to be something that gets set up. You see it set up often off a line change, right? Maybe they dump it in, they go for a change, the team, the guys come out, and they can kind of get set into the 1-3-1, right? If you're in the offensive zone and you're on a cycle or you're on a rush and you make a turnover or you turn the puck over at the top of the circle, the Kings aren't in the 1-3-1.
Yeah.
Right. So how many times have we seen, we just almost like Fiala has made some bad turnovers. Gavrikov was up on the 1 and it's a rush chance going back. That's not against the 1-3-1. That's a break and play. That's a turnover, or they have extended offensive zone time and then it's coming back the other way. Now there could be other things within that, like perhaps they have to perhaps their F3 is not where he needs to be. Maybe he needs to be a little bit higher and they're not doing enough of a job kind of being able to back check through the middle, being able to cut off some of those rush chances because maybe they're getting cut too low. There's other things that go into it than just say, well, the 1-3-1 isn't working. Because I bet if we looked back, how many of these scoring chances off the rush and rush chances are actually coming off the 1-3-1? I bet not very many. I bet they're coming off of the other chances that maybe, again, it could be turnovers in inopportune areas, things like that happen. Now, the other statistic, now if we talk about looking at more D zone type of stuff, high danger chances against, they're 21st. They were second the first half of the season. They're 20th in slot shots against. They were second before that. That tells me that there's something going wrong in the zone. I don't know what that is. I mean, it's nothing new. I don't think there's anything new from what I can see. You know, they've got they play like this man-on-man type of style. You can see the guy's always pointing, right? Whenever you watch the Kings, watch them in the D zone, and as guys switch on the opposing team, you see them pointing like, I got this guy, you got the, you can see them communicating with each other. But all that takes is one little slip up or somebody that's not as fleet of foot or whatever, and they get beat. I mean, I remember the goal that St. Louis scored. I don't know if it was Kyrou or if Kyrou set it up. England's got no chance. He ended up being matched up with in their system. He ends up being matched up against Kyrou. That is a mismatch. Kyrou's going to win that one-on-one battle 10 times out of 10 because he's lightning fast. And that's not a knock on England. That is what it is. And he gets beat. And again, I don't remember I don't think it was Kyrou that scored, but either way, that was something where once one guy gets beat in that man-on-man, everything falls apart. There's a lot of it that can fall apart. And I think we're seeing that happen too. Look at what happened against Nashville in front of the net. Forsberg's there. And now that was a play off a power play that they just never really gained control and they couldn't get the puck out of the zone. And England doesn't pick up Forsberg and it's in the net. And on the second goal, I think Nashville scored. England was a little clunky, loses the puck. Kopitar, I think, is there to help, but then he gets it stripped. Before you know it, a lot going on, and it's in the zone, or it's in the net, excuse me, because I mean, that's a situation where it looked like the Kings had possession. So the team may be thinking, okay, we've got possession now. We can maybe start to think about our transition. England struggles a bit. Again, Kopitar was there to help, but I don't know if he lost the puck or got it stripped from him, or even if he ended up getting full possession when he was helping out England. I guess my point of all of this is to say, I think it's too simplistic to just say, oh, the 1-3-1's not working, because it's not as if they just skate around in a 1-3-1. You know what I mean? They don't. I mean, it has to be like a time to set that up. And I bet when
it's like a flying V across the ice all the time.
Exactly. So if they don't have time to set that up, then it may be a modified. They may be able to do it kind of. It depends on how it's coming back the other way. But think about it: if you're in an offensive zone shift and you've got two forwards caught, you don't even have bodies for a 1-3-1 on the rush coming back, right? So,
hold up, guys. Let's get our system. You want to stop here? Well,
yeah. So how we say a lot of times, offense can be created, and it starts in the D zone with clean exits and being able to move pucks out of the zone efficiently. Similar if you have a structure, if you have a setup. I know we talk about this with our team at the high school level. Like if we have a way we want to play for a reason in the offensive zone, but if we get away from that, if we start to get a little too jumpy, teams can break out a lot easier. And all of a sudden we're allowing teams to come break out and through the neutral zone easier. So if the Kings in the offensive zone aren't playing the way that they should be playing in the offensive zone, it could allow that other team to break out a heck of a lot easier and thus create chances coming the other way. So there's a lot that can go into it. I just think it's a little simplistic to just say the 1-3-1 sucks.
I think it's just, and this has just been great because I didn't even think of any of those things, and it really didn't. And it's just coming from a guy who doesn't watch. I don't watch a lot of tape. I wasn't born in hockey. I don't pick up on these types of things, and you're a coach, which is nice. And yeah, Devo, you need a goaltender as well if you're making impossible saves when you're giving up a lot of slot chances. But I think the three things I took from it is, one, the offense has not been as good. So when your offense isn't as good, you're not controlling the puck in the offensive zone, which leads to a lot more counter chances. Fair. The defensive hasn't been as good because of the fact that they're giving up a lot more chances in the defensive zone by missed assignments and not being able to make that first pass out of the zone. Fair. To where the odd man rushes seem to be because of probably the offense, and they're not playing well in the offensive zone to keep the puck down there. I think it's interesting to where it's more about assignment. And so then let me counter question you there, Joe. In the defensive zone, obviously the Kings run a lot of man, or they kind of cycle the man type thing. What are some other styles of defense that maybe a team can run with the personnel that we have? Because we do have two guys. Gavrikov's a better skater than England, but they're both big guys that are stationary style defenders that use their stick and everything like that. So is a zone a bit better? Or how do you?
I don't love necessarily the way the Kings D zone is personally. Now, they've obviously have had a lot of success with it, so they've made it work. They've made it work, and McClellan obviously knows what he's doing. Obviously, lately it's not going so well. The numbers that I just read off from that article in The Athletic. But yeah, I mean, you can have something where you see teams kind of have it. It's almost like a box in one. They'll have somebody in the slot, oftentimes the center. Sometimes you can have, I think they call it 5 on the dice. Think of a dice where there's outside and you got one in the middle. So that's something that you can do that's a little bit different. I mean, you can look at the way like Vegas plays. Like all Vegas tries to do is keep you to the outside, and they're just going to eat pucks. They're willing to give up the possession. You're not getting quality against Vegas though. But again, that said, it has worked for the Kings. The Kings have been one of the better expected goals against teams in the league for the last couple of years. They've been one of the better teams in the league in terms of high danger chances against. I don't have a great explanation as to why it's just fallen apart the last month and a half. That's the $1 million question that I would love to be in the video sessions with McClellan and his staff to see what is it that's falling apart. Is it systematic? Is it, what is it? Yeah, I see there's some comments about Vegas blocking shots. It's the system set up to let them do that, because they're not chasing guys all over the zone. Where the Kings, you see, they are actively in guys' faces trying to chase guys, and because their whole thing is get puck and then go back on the rush the other way. Where Vegas is, we'll let you play with the puck a little bit along the outside, but we're not going to let you get to the inside. So we're going to force you to take shots from the outside. They're not going to get through because we're willing to block them, and then we'll beat you that way.
Which seems like it's a lot grittier way to play defense. I mean, you're wearing tons. It's a lot
I don't
of
like
mental
that
fortitude.
either. I don't like the idea of, first of all, I don't like the idea of just giving the other team and allowing them, I don't say giving, but allowing them the possession. I don't like the idea of just sitting back and blocking shots. I don't like that. It's not exactly my style. But it works for them. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Like there's multiple ways to do this stuff. And the Kings have had success. I don't know what it is exactly that's fallen apart right now as to why some of these, again, all those stats I read off from October 11th through December 27th, they were first in all those, top 2 or 3 in all of those stats. And ever since December 28th, they have been bottom half of the league. I don't know how that falls off a cliff like that. I don't know. And again, that's until they figure that out, they're going to be stuck in this rut. Like they had a 32% expected. The funny thing is about Nashville, of all the games that they have lost over the last month and a half, Nashville was one of the ones that they definitely should have lost. There's been games where they should have won or could have won, at least possession-wise, they controlled the chances. You think of that Sharks game, they should have won that Sharks game. They didn't. But Nashville, they didn't play a good game against Nashville, but they won.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes in hockey,
It's puzzling because I think this team, obviously they're talented enough to win. I mean, they did that for the first half of the season. You're looking at if we're playing man on defense and then we're not playing well in the offensive zone with the cycles and constantly keeping pressure, it might just be an effort issue. It might just be a determination issue because effort is not physically effort. It's also mental effort.
Sure.
Like I have to do this for a full 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And when you get a little bit more breaks in the beginning of the season, you get some more days off, you get some mental, breaks. I don't know. I mean, these guys are all paid professional athletes, so you would think, but they're also all human beings. So like that could be a factor. And I don't know. I don't know what it is because I know as a pitcher, I mean, I played baseball. As a pitcher, I maybe had all my stuff working 5 times my entire life, 5-10 times my entire life. Like usually there's something not working and you have to work with the other things that you're given that day to have a successful outing on the mound. Sure. I'm sure that the hockey players feel the same way. Hey, man, my feet hurt today or my legs hurt today, or man, I'm really dealing with this rib injury or whatever. And I have to make all the other things that I'm doing well or do well to compete at a high level tonight. So,
yeah. The tough part about this stretch is to the naked eye, I don't think there's a drastic, certainly not a drastic change, but I don't know that there's like a system breakdown here, which is probably frustrating for McClellan, right? Because he's trying to find answers. And if the answers, if I say the answers are individual errors, individual mistakes, I mean, that's tough because what do? You put the guys in the right spots, and I guess
and one of those two players that are making mistakes make $15 million combined.
So I mean, we saw Fiala get benched the other day. He didn't play in overtime.
I want to talk to you about that
this season.
Steven brings it up here. The team should work on improving 3-on-3 and shootouts. They're blowing it in overtime. We are horrible in overtime. I think as long as I've been watching the Kings, they've been horrible in overtime.
Can you? I thought I looked at this the other day because I had a theory about why they are what they are in overtime and shootouts. But then I looked at last year, and were they really good last year?
I don't remember. I'd have to look that up.
I think they were really good in overtime last year. So then I erased my theory and said, well, that's over with.
Well, they ain't this year. So what's your
They're
theory
not.
this year? Like, I mean, it seems they tried out the same Kopitar, Kempe, Doughty to start, but like their best player this season has been Quentin Byfield, and he never plays in overtime. Like,
Yeah.
do you guys even do 3-on-3 overtime for high school, or is it just over?
No, we do overtime. It's not 3-on-3. It's 5-on-5.
Okay. So like, I don't know. Is it personnel? Is it the fact that this team isn't built to be wet and wild that the 3-on-3 is?
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah, I think that's part of it. I think the other thing is the goaltending #goalies works when you have a very good 5-on-5 system and structure like the Kings have had in place. So you can kind of have anybody and play well. That goes away in overtime and shootouts where it's a lot more helter-skelter. So you kind of need more talent at the position. And I would say the Kings are lacking talent at the position. It works for 5-on-5, less so overtime and shootouts. I got no problem. Listen, the thing with Kopitar, I have more of an issue with Deneau than I do Kopitar, but you got to have at least one of them getting trotted out there because one of them has to start the overtime because possession is just so important. You have to win the faceoff, and those are your best faceoff guys. I got no problem with Kopitar, and Kempe's coming off a 40-goal season. I don't really have an issue with Adrian Kempe either. I like Deneau as a 5-on-5 guy. Kills penalties. I want to see Byfield out there instead of Deneau. I'd like to see Byfield with, Fiala maybe.
Like get the face off and then go off the ice, and then Byfield comes on the ice.
If you don't trust Byfield to take the draw, then that's a good idea. I would get Byfield absolutely much more on the ice here instead of Deneau. And so then they've gone back with PLD, and I think Moore has been the duo. I think those two, ironically, as much as I want to see them play together in 5-on-5, I want to say that they've played together in overtime sometimes, PL and Moore. And I don't have an issue with that. So I think the biggest one here is Byfield's got to get on the ice more. And so who do you take off? I'm sure probably everybody would say Dubois. I actually say Deneau personally. So, but either way, they've got to find a way to get him in there more. I don't want to see Gavrikov on the ice in overtime. The problem is, as I've said for years now, this D-core is not set up to play 3-on-3 either because they have two puck movers, two guys that are capable.
All the more reason to bring up Clark and keep Clark and Spence in the lineup.
I agree with that. But so you roll out Doughty, you roll out Clark, and then it's like Roy, who's fine, or Gavrikov. These are not exactly very high on the list of defensemen that you want out there in a 3-on-3 situation. I would think there's a reason why you see some high skill D-men across the league in those positions. So I think part of it's personnel. Part of it is they don't have a choice. Like the D-men are the D-men. They don't until they start playing Clark and Spence together, this is what they got. So you're going to see it's what they got. So, but some of it's fluky. I mean, I know it's maybe a cop out, but it's 3-on-3, man. These teams aren't practicing 3-on-3, and like it's sometimes it's just the luck of the possession and the luck of the bounce that goes your way. I mean, I thought the play that Deneau made was stupid. I guess in fairness, I should watch it back, but when I watched it live, I'm like, don't pass it, don't pass it, don't pass it, don't pass it. It wasn't a clear odd man rush. He passes, it gets picked off, it's gone the other way. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. I think the point you made that I like the most is the goalie thing, right? Because you're getting a lot of more 1-on-1s or 2-on-1s where the goalie is 1-on-1 with a shooter a lot. And he needs to be the person that makes the save, similar to in the shootout, right? You're 1-on-1 with the shooter a lot. And that's when it comes up to goalie skills. Now, for the shootout, I heard this in the I heard this in the World Juniors. A lot of these kids practice the shootouts when they're just messing around with their buddies, right? Like
Yeah.
they're just messing around with their buddies, practice shootout. A lot more older school hockey players don't really do that, and so I would like to see more youth on the shootouts for the team, right? I mean, give Laugh a shootout, right? Give Kempe's actually pretty good. I think he's over 30 something percent. But give some of these younger guys that have some scoring acumen on the shootout. I mean, I wouldn't even mind Clark getting a shootout experience, right? So when he plays, but playing all these older guys, and no offense to Kopi, I mean I've seen him score on the shootout before,
Yeah.
but you're looking at what who was Elias Anderson, right? Like he was like over 45%. Like some guys just have a knack for doing this.
Yeah.
Trevor Zagras, for all the crap people give him, I think he's up over half. Like he is just good at the shootouts, right? So obviously that McClellan's not going to donate free time, the free practice time for shootouts, but like some of these kids, they practice it when they're just messing around. And
sometimes they do. They did actually. He said the other day in one of his media sessions that the guys were practicing at the end of practice shootouts, and it's a fun way to end practice. Guys are they can have fun with it, but you can also watch and see who's doing what. And some guys are just more comfortable with it. And in general, I think the young guys are more comfortable with it, but maybe that's not the case. I don't know. And it probably depends on the goalie, right, that you're going against. There's some goalies that maybe are a little bit more susceptible to a shot coming. So maybe you prefer to have, Carl Grundstrom shoot in that shootout because he's going to come down and wire one. Where if you got somebody that, maybe is more susceptible and struggles more going side to side on a deke, maybe you want a Kopi or you want a Fiala. So that part of it, I'm sure, goes into those conversations too. And then after you get past the first three shooters, it's, again, these things can be fluky. Because I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I looked last year, they had like 10 wins in the overtime and shootout last year.
I have no idea.
So, yeah. So like, what's the difference between last year and this year? So,
I mean, we're trying to grasp at anything as Kings fans, Joe. Come on, we just need something to grasp onto. But hey, it is what it is. We need a break. I think Kings fans need a mental break. So also a break might be good for a few of us here to enjoy that. So appreciate you guys in the chat coming in. We were over 50 strong for most of the podcast, so really appreciate all you guys do for us and our loyal fans here. Get your Trevor Moore shirts, the one I'm wearing right now. $30 sizes small to extra large at contact at hockeyroyalty.com and Venmo at hockeyroyalty. Once Russell gives you the go ahead that those shirts are available, you can Venmo us there for those people. Hey, get your girl Trevor Moore t-shirt for Valentine's Day.
Perfect.
Why not? That sounds good. Or get yourself one. Love yourself a little bit and get yourself a Trevor Moore shirt. So really appreciate that. Always find our articles every day here at hockeyroyalty.com. Follow us at hockey_royalty, at Random Commando 24, at NHL Russell, at JW Paterino. All and any rain news coming from at Kopitar for HOF. Kyle does a great job for the team. And if you want to make some money on the Super Bowl, DraftKings code THPN. Kings better turn it around. Otherwise, this can get pretty bleak for the rest of the season. And hopefully we do so. Thank you guys for coming in. Have a good night.